We have Getting Going with ColdFusion Builder by Charlie Arehart. Over to you, Charlie. You can start now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Let me share my screen. It takes a moment to get that stuff set up. And we couldn't do it beforehand because the other session was going. So just give me a moment. Sorry about this. And it's not being responsive. There you go. Oh, fun with demos. So just one more moment till you guys see it, and then we'll get started. Also, Porvo, while we wait, do these go 50 minutes, 50 minutes?
Yes, 50 minutes.
And then
we can see a
question, or 45 minutes and 5 minutes a question?
45 minutes and 5 minutes. We could do that. Maybe extend it by 5 minutes, but that's max.
That's fine. Thank you, ma'am. And so, Rich, no, it's not on report. Okay, you said laugh, LOL. Okay. And I'm not going to be able to keep an eye on the chat the whole time. So if there's a question, we'll try to attend to those later. But it's not showing me the screen, but you guys are seeing my website, right?
Correct. Yes, we can see it, Charlie.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. Sorry for that delay in getting started. 1 minute of wasted time. I'll try to make up for it real fast. And one way I'm going to do that is I'm going to do this presentation differently than I did it at CF Summit. So as you all know, these online summit sessions are repeats of what we gave at CF Summit in September. And what I want to do with this talk is say that if you look at my site, you can see on my carehart.org presentations area. If you ever can't find it, just go there and go to presentations. And I list all the talks I've given. And if you click on the link, for example, for this one for Getting Going with CFBuilder, it drops down to the page where it describes it, offers a link if you want to share it with somebody, says when I have or will be presenting it. And then check this out. Here's the PDF. And this is the PDF of what I gave at CF Summit. In that presentation at Summit, I gave a lot of background and insight and information that any of you watching this talk, you're almost inevitably going to want to get more information. And I want to start by saying, go get that PDF. Not right now. Don't worry about it now. But make a note to yourself to go get that PDF, because you will see ample information in there, which I'm going to not repeat for the sake of really focusing on demonstrations. And I'm sure some people will love that, but inevitably it's going to mean I'm going to skip something where you're going to go, wait a minute, you didn't explain this. Trust me, I explained it in that talk, and the PDF, as those who see my talks go to, you know that I put a lot of information in the PDFs in the slides. So second, I did repeat the talk a couple months later at the Mid-Michigan CFUG, ColdFusion User Group, and here's the PDF for that. It's a little bit updated. But the bigger point is they recorded their session. You know, the CF Summits are not recorded. That's why we're doing these. But the Mid-Michigan CFUG did record that session. And they're flexible in their time. So we went a couple hours, and I was able to elaborate on some things. So I'm going to say again, to the degree that I fail to cover something at a level of detail you wish, if you don't find the answer in the PDF, you may find that in the live recording that we did for 2 hours, you may find stuff. So if you're really interested in this topic, I'm just saying those will be valuable resources, and they go beyond what exists as documentation. But to that point, I also want to say that there is ample documentation. So before I go any further, I want to make sure everybody here understands I'm talking about ColdFusion Builder, the extension for Visual Studio Code. And you can see right there that in the Adobe documentation, there is a substantial section here. This is a whole section, and it goes on and on and on with, you know, about 10 pages. And each of those 10 pages sometimes vary from a couple of screens to several screens. So I can't cover everything in 45 minutes. And I don't even want to cover the level of detail I did in the talk. I want to focus on demos. So with that as preface, we're going to move on. Now, one thing before I move on is I do also want to say this, because it's important. Some of you listening go, I don't use that Visual Studio Code stuff. I use vscode, right? So that's the open source implementation of the same engine that underlies VS Code. Well, yes, you can use ColdFusion Builder with VS Code. Yes, you can. And if anybody says you can't, see my talk. I explain how you can get it, how you'd implement it. I'll leave it at that. I also want to say that if you've been paying attention in the months since, we've now got Cursor and Anti-Gravity and so all three of those and more, they're all based on VS Code's engine. It's an open source engine. And so those AI-oriented environments, editors, IDEs, and AI agent interaction tools, my point is those guys are all based on, not all of them, but the ones I named and a few others are all based on VS Code, the engine that underlies VS Code. So yes, you can use them. And I just want to show real quick, it's getting a little ahead of things, but I just want to say, so here's my VS Code, and I'll talk later about using this, but I want to also hop over here to, goodness, I had them all open earlier. Where'd they go? Oh no, that is VS Codium. Sorry, that's VS Codium. You can tell by the icon. For those who care, this icon up here is telling you that's VS Codium. And here's Cursor, and here's ColdFusion Builder implemented inside of Cursor. And I had Anti-Gravity, but I had to reboot. I'm not going to reopen it, but trust me, it's in Anti-Gravity as well. So just want to say that CFBuilder is more than just for VS Code. It's for anything that is a VS Code based engine. And there may be some challenges in getting it going. And I covered that in the talk in September. So in the PDF, you can find that. I want to move on. So there's so much to VS Code. And I just want to start by saying, if you come in here and scroll down past, the update stuff, you start to see things like there's a getting started up above, and there's working with code and project manager and adding a server and debugging applications and refactoring. And these are all the things that CFBuilder can do. And some of you are coming to this going, that's what I want to see. Okay, we're going to show some stuff. But I also want to say, for those who don't know, CFBuilder, ColdFusion Builder, is much more than some of the other extensions that are out there. That's not to knock the other ColdFusion extensions that are out there, Kamasamak and Gareth's and even Boxlang's. A lot of those, and I covered this in more depth in the talk, they're based on basically the same underlying extension. They all pretty much come from the same root extension, and they offer good things, and some people are happy with them, and that's fine. By the way, you can have more than one. You can enable one and disable the other. You shouldn't have more than one CF engine extension at the same time. But I just want to say real quickly, if you prefer one of those other ones, you can use it. You could disable it and enable CFBuilder extension, and vice versa. Okay. So you might say, well, I don't find I like something about CFBuilder. Well, I'm saying use it for what it might benefit for you. I'm going to show you a couple things in this talk that those things don't do. And you might go, okay, I'll use it for those things. That's fine. Or some will go, I'm just going to use it. I'm not going to worry about the others because it does everything I want. All right. So again, those are just some prefatory things I wanted to get out before we proceed. All right. So let's get into using it. Let me get to. Yeah, that's the one. All right. So first, I just want to point out that it is just an editor, an IDE. By the way, we're talking about Visual Studio Code now. Visual Studio Code, the thing from Microsoft, which is free. And by the way, ColdFusion Builder, which is a free extension. Visual Studio Code and VS Codium and the others, at their core, they're editors or IDEs, if you want to call it that. And they offer all kinds of capability that's got nothing to do with ColdFusion. ColdFusion Builder is an extension on top of it. So the way these things work is that they all either look like this or they can be made to look like this. They have buttons down the left, and one of the buttons is called extensions. And you can look for extensions. And if I search for ColdFusion, I'd be shown many extensions. And I can just click on it and say install it. And that's what I did with ColdFusion Builder. There it is. Adobe ColdFusion Builder is the extension we're talking about. Okay, Adobe ColdFusion Builder. And you just click the button and it installs it into whatever VS Code you have, or VS Codium, or whatever. Now, again, there's more to it with VS Codium. You can't just search for it in its marketplace. But in my PDF, I talk about how you can go about pointing to the extension. It's called a VSIX, and I can tell you where you can get it and how to do it. Again, let's move on. If you're using VS Code, it's as simple as searching it like this, and it shows up. And once it's installed, it's just there to be leveraged if you choose to leverage it, but you don't have to. You could just be looking at files and folders and opening folders and looking at files. And, I'll just pick a file randomly and Just want to pick one that might be a little more interesting. Not that these are terribly interesting. I mean, it's just some of the stuff underlying my site. Now, notice that when I open that, it's a bunch of tags. You know, it works with script or tags, doesn't matter. Don't focus on that. But here's tags, and it's color coded. That's one of the things you get, of course, but so do other things provide color coding. But CFBuilder does more than just color coding. And that's where it starts to get interesting, and so do some others. But again, we'll keep going. At the simplest level, if you open a CF file, CFM, CFC, you get color coding. And then you should start to get other things like tag insight. So if a tag has attributes, you should be able to say, I want to see what those attributes are. So if I come here to the end of this, for example, CF head, and hit the space bar, I should see attributes. Now, some people go, see, that's what's wrong with that thing. It doesn't work. No, it does work. You need to understand that there's a little more to it sometimes than meets the eye. If you look on my screen, over here is the CF logo that got implemented because I chose to choose the CFBuilder extension. I have to click on that. Check it out. See, it says Adobe ColdFusion Builder. I have to click on that. And then it opens up a bunch of stuff on the left. And for now, let's not worry about the stuff on the left. But that also has now enabled some functionality in CFBuilder that you wouldn't get sometimes. And I'm not sure right now, I'm going to find out in a moment whether that particular feature required that. But I know there are some aspects of using CFBuilder's functionality where you have to have done certain things. And we're going to talk about those as we go. One of them is clicking on the button to enable it. So let's just see if I come here and so that's not working. Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. I don't know that that's a particularly good example. I might have used up all the attributes that are on that tag, but just let me let that simmer, that if you try stuff and things don't seem to work, first notice you might need to click on that CF logo. What I also want to say is that sometimes when you click on that CF logo, you're going to get an error. And there's going to be a bunch of pop-ups at the bottom talking about that it couldn't find Java. And that's something else that I covered a little bit more in the other talk. CFBuilder is like ColdFusion, leveraging Java. And if you have not installed Java on your computer that's running vscode, and if it's not implemented in what's called a way that you can just go to the command line and type Java and it would work, if you haven't done that, then CFBuilder is going to go, hey, I can't find Java either. So the simplest solution in that case is just go get Java and install it. If you go to the command line and type Java and hit enter and it says not found, you don't have Java. And CFBuilder leverages Java under the covers, and certain functionality won't work unless you click that button to turn on that CFBuilder integration, and that won't work unless you have Java installed. Again, I'll leave you to look into that more on your own. I want to move on to more interesting stuff. So, for example, another thing that's interesting is that you can do formatting of code. Now, with CFBuilder having been implemented, when I right-click, I just right-clicked randomly anywhere, it doesn't matter, I just right-clicked, bunch of things come up. And among those things are various features. And if I scroll down to the bottom of the list, you see things that tell me, right, if you don't see these when you right click, then you don't have it working with CFBuilder. I've got things like toggling both script and tag based comments, or inserting, by the way, that's tags or script, depending whether you're looking at tags or script. And moving on there at the bottom, it also talks about running an application and all that stuff. I'll come back to that stuff later. My point is, if you do that and it doesn't work, that's its own issue, right? So some people try to work with CFBuilder, trip over it, find things don't work, ask around, don't get good answers, and move on. I'm trying to give you insights into what to look for that often will help a lot. But what I wanted to focus on is I just opened this particular template and I might want to format it. And you can format the document. So it was right there. I was just scrolling up the list. There it is, format document. And it doesn't necessarily make any change in your particular code, but that's what it would do, is format your code. Now, I also want to say, some people, when they try that and it does the formatting, they go, I don't like that formatting. Listen, this is very important too, because you don't find this discussed very much unless you look in the docs. If you just complain about it online, everybody just goes, yeah, well, it sucks. That's why you shouldn't use it. No. You can control the formatting. So check this out. Watch carefully. I'm going down to the bottom right corner of my screen, the bottom right corner. And there's a thing here called Profile Preferences. And when I click on it, and again, that's only there if CFBuilder has worked, it's going to open up the preferences for managing ColdFusion Builder. Look at this. collapse CFML folding. Do I want that or don't want that? Code assist. Do I want it to pop up things? What language do I want to use? And then check it out, formatter. Do I want to control tabs and spaces? And there's indentation, right? So you can choose between tabs and spaces and how many and white space and wrapping. So again, I'm going to leave it at that and just say, I don't have time to get into all this. I just want to say, don't just give up and go, I don't like the way it worked. You can control it. All right. So you make those changes, hit submit, and it takes effect. And if somehow it feels like it doesn't take effect, then close it and reopen it, and it should take effect. And by the way, this is VS Code, right? CFBuilder is just an extension. VS Code is the kind of software that if you close it and reopen it, it reopens right where you left it, even to the point that if you've opened up some file and you opened up a tab and started writing in some code and you haven't saved it, or if you open a file and edit it, but you haven't saved those edits, when you close it and reopen it, it remains where you left it, unsaved, exactly with the code having not yet been saved. So anyway, and now we can see I'm back into CFBuilder, and yes, it's color coding again, but no, look, the CF logo over here hasn't been selected, so some functionality wouldn't work. So sometimes you got to click on that. Now let's move on, because those things you can read about in the docs about what you can do and the insight and code assist and things like that. What does it mean when I look over here and there's project manager and CF servers and RDS data view and all this stuff? Gets very interesting. This is where it goes beyond just being an editor. Just hear me now. If you have ColdFusion installed on your own machine, now a lot of you don't do that, I know, but if you do have ColdFusion installed on your own machine, then you can connect CFBuilder to that ColdFusion that's installed on your own machine very easily. I'll show you in a moment, but let's move on. Some of you are going to say, well, I don't use ColdFusion on my own machine. My ColdFusion's on some central development server. You can connect ColdFusion Builder to your central development server. Yes, you can. I'll get to that in a second. Let me go further. Some of you say, yeah, we don't use a central development server, and I don't have a local ColdFusion. I just have production. Well, let me just say, you can connect CFBuilder to your production server. You could, absolutely could. And there's some aspects of it where it's not a big deal. And then there's other aspects of it where you got to be careful what you're doing. But I want to say, you can. Now, when I started out by saying if the CF is local to you, it's very straightforward. If the CF is not local to you, if it's on another machine, whether it's development or test or production or stage QA, it doesn't matter. If it's on another machine, well, then you get into firewall issues, right? So whether CFBuilder can reach into the server and get what it wants in the ways I'll show you in a moment, well, it won't be able to do that if firewall is blocking it. And conversely, the firewall blocking it would be a way to protect you. And that's why some people would go, I will do this against my other server because my firewall is going to keep anybody else from doing what I can do. Well, similarly, if you try to do stuff and it doesn't work, often the first problem is you're pointing to a machine whose firewall is blocking CFBuilder trying to reach into it. And I'll show how it reaches into it in just a moment. But I want to say one last thing. Some of you are going to go, hey, Charlie, what about command box? Oh, ears perked up now. Can I use the CFBuilder and these features to connect to a server if it's a command box server? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I know you're going to read things that say you can't or that it doesn't work. You can. There's just one little tiny thing you have to do, and I covered that in the other talk. And again, in the interest of time, I'm going to leave you to read the PDF of the other talk or see the presentation I gave. Or I've got if you Google it, you'll find I've answered that question on the command box discussion forum. And Brad was involved in the communication, and he was thrilled to find out that it was that simple. So anyway, you can look into that. I'll leave you to that. I want to move on and say, so if you have VS Code installed, if you've implemented the CFBuilder extension, and now you want to take advantage of these things that involve setting up a server, and there are certain features that I haven't shown you that require you to set up a server, then you come to the CF logo and you would see the CF servers, and for you it'd be blank. And you'll see here, for example, a plus sign, add a server. And when that opens up, it says, well, what do you want to call it? And where is it? And what port should I use? Now this port, it's the port for the built-in web server that ColdFusion uses, the port you'd use to get to the ColdFusion administrator. That's the port you put here, okay? So it might be 8500 or it might be something else, but it's not 80, it's This is the built-in web server port that if you launch your CFadmin, what port do you see it connecting on from your local machine, right? This is the way I tell people to try it on your browser, on your local machine. Try to go to the CFadmin of the machine you're trying to talk to. Can you get to the admin? Yes or no, right? That'll tell you if the port's open for you to get to it. And what port does it use? That's the port you'd put in here, okay? And it might be a domain name, might be an IP address, might be a machine name, and it's a port, okay? And if you don't get that right, it's not going to be able to connect to it, all right? So that's that. If you just do that, you could hit submit. Now there's some other stuff down here that says, is it local or is it remote? Well, remember I said, if it's on your machine with you, his local options makes it really easy. You just hit submit and it pretty much works. If it's remote, then you click this little button and now you have some more stuff to fill in and you have to tell it certain things like what folder things are in. And again, this is discussed in the documentation. I just want to remind you, rather than get into this right now, here's add a ColdFusion server. This stuff is discussed in the docs, but I was letting you know that that's the stuff that often trips people up as they forget to do these various little things, and they may or may not tell them, or the messages may not be as clear to them as they wish it was. But I want to show you another cool thing, and that is when you mouse over this CF servers, the second little button there, look at that. It says import local server, import local server. So if you click that button, it will pull in, well, you'll tell it, watch, I'll click the button and it says, well, what do you want to call it? You know, and I could just call it Bob. You can call CF 2025 Bob. I'll just call it CF 2025 Bob. You have spaces and everything. What do you want to call this thing? What's it going to show up on the left? And then it simply says, tell me where this ColdFusion lives, right? So for those of you that, you know, I'm on Windows, we can on Linux, doesn't matter. So it's on Linux, Mac. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm going to find my ColdFusion 2025. I have, you know, all of them. And I happen to have it. And they want you to point to what's called the CFusion folder. So those of you who work with ColdFusion know that there's a CFusion folder. That's what it's looking for. And I just click on that. And now it's added CF 2025 Bob. And I have it running, so it's already detected that it's running. It's really that simple. Now that screen right there where I pointed to the folder, that's where when you do it with command box and you do finally point to the correct CFusion folder way down inside of the deployment of the instances engine, that's still not enough. What you have to do is create a blank empty jvm.config file. Let's not get into it now, but that's what I discussed in the forum thread and in my PDF and in the talk. Anyway, let's move on. That's all you got to do. And now you've got that there. And now that you've got that there, well, you can do lots of stuff. For example, I can right click on that and say, launch the administrator. Now, do you need to use this to launch your administrator? No, you could just go to it because we already talked about it. You'd want to know what's the IP address and port. And I happen to use 8525 to distinguish one from another, but it just launched the admin in my browser. That's all that does. But it's a proof that, yes, things are working. When I tell it, like even the proof also that it showed up green because it was running, and I can restart it and I can stop it and I can edit this. And there's some things in here that we didn't talk about that might come in handy later, like that local server settings. It filled that in for us. With a remote one, you'd fill it in yourself, and a thing called URL prefix. And I covered that a bit in the other talk. So I'm going to move on. I saw a bunch of questions coming up. Is there anything? Okay, good. Here we go. Indeed. Why is it rated so low? Sean asked, and let me try to bump up the font to make it easier for me to read. Just a second. And you guys don't see this, but the way they've got it set up for us as presenters, there's some other stuff on the screen that's limiting the real estate that I have. So I hope this helps. No, it didn't. Just a second. Yeah, I'm just going to move on. Why it's rated so low? Well, especially when it first came out, people often tripped over things. This has been out for about 3 years. People tripped over things, couldn't get it working, didn't know some of these things I've told you, and they just said, oh, this thing sucks, and they started down rating it. And the marketplace doesn't forget, and sadly, it doesn't give preference to recent scores. So that's partly why it's rated so low. Oh, there you go. A large number. There you go. From Mark. Awesome. Excellent. And they've been fixed. And there have been multiple updates. And I covered that in the other talk. There have been multiple updates to CFBuilder. And every time there's a new one, you'll be told in the interface, hey, there's a new one. Come get it. Our development environment uses keys. Keys. Can CFBuilder work with them so we don't have to log into the server every time we want to connect? Well, it depends on what you mean by keys. I'm assuming you mean like you're doing SSH or some other sort of certificate-based public-private key exchange. If that's what you mean, it's just a communication over port, in my case, 8525, that shouldn't require you to log on. Now, you may mean something else, and I don't want to get bogged down in this detail. And also, I'm glad to see Mark or others might chime in. But let's move on. I tried to install on VS Codium, following the instructions. The extension's looking for the settings JSON from VS Code, and not the extension is looking for the settings. That's not my experience. So I don't know why you're experiencing that problem, but that's not my experience. So let me also say now, before we forget, if you guys trip over problems like this, sure, you can ask in the community. You can ask here. We just don't have a lot of time. Beware, if you ask in the community, you'll often get wrong answers. You can ask AI. Of course, you'll get wrong answers. Sometimes you get right answers from AI. Sometimes you get right answers from the community. You can always email Adobe directly. And there's multiple addresses by which you can reach Adobe. One, I'll just write it down here in the chat, is cfinstall@adobe.com. And that's one L. cfinstall@adobe.com. And that's meant to be for free support for getting CF running, and they'll help you with getting CFBuilder running. So reach out to them and ask them. Now, Steve finally had asked, can you explain the RDS file view? Yes, I can. Now, I want to say something about this too. This stuff, the RDS data view and the RDS file view, I didn't get into it yet, but if I edit this, I'll just do it one more time. I'll edit this. I didn't get into it because it was a level of detail I wanted to save for later, but now it's later. Let's go ahead and get into it. On this settings page right here, besides saying where is the server and what's its port, there are features of CFBuilder that only work if it can connect to the server through this thing called RDS. And this RDS has nothing to do with AWS RDS or any other Microsoft RDS. It's remote development services. It was introduced with ColdFusion when Ilya had it. It was a feature in ColdFusion Studio and in HomeSite Plus and in Dreamweaver, and now it's leveraged in CFBuilder, and it was also leveraged in the old CFBuilder that ran on Eclipse. But again, I covered those things in the other talk. See the PDF for that. But this RDS is over this port 85, whatever in your case, my case 25, 8525. If it can reach it, and if it's enabled, right? So it's also got to be enabled in the admin. So let me just show you really quick, because I was going to get into this, but I'll just jump into it now. Under security, so I know for those of you who have not been on CF 2018 or above, these buttons are all very confusing. But starting in CF 2018, the settings became buttons, and you can click up here to see what those buttons are. And we're going to the security button. And if you ever wonder, how the heck can I find things? There's a search box since 2018. Just come up to the admin, click the search button, and type RDS, and it takes you to the page, whatever page it's available. And I was about to go to security. And then at the top of security, you usually go to administrator for your administrator password. But look, there's an RDS tab. And this enabling RDS has to be chosen to be done on the server. So CFBuilder cannot talk to even your local CF machine unless you've enabled this RDS capability. And it says service, but it's just a feature inside of CF. And if you click that button and hit submit, it reconfigures a web XML file inside of ColdFusion. And then when you restart, RDS should be available. That's one. You have to enable it. Two is, how should you be able to authenticate to it? And when you install CF, it asks you if you want to enable RDS. And if you say yes, it asks you what password you want to use. And if you type one in, it makes note of it. But you can also come in here and change the password. You can change it to be a separate username and password. You could say no authentication required. That's probably not wise. But the point is, you could make it be this. And if you do this, let me just say real quickly, then you go up here to this user manager page. And the user manager page is where you add a user and define whether that user has the authority to use RDS. Look at that. I could create a user called Bob and say he does have RDS access. Again, these are all things I can't get into right now. It's too much detail, but that's what you can do. You enable that RDS capability. Now your CF server is willing to be talked to from an RDS client, and the RDS clients are CFBuilder, old and new, Dreamweaver, HomeSite Plus, CF Studio. Well, anyway, so if you put in the valid username and password, wherever they are, check this out. There's a button right there that says test connection. And when I test that connection, it'll either say it's successful or it's not. And I can't tell, I don't see it, but it is working. The reason why I know it's working is now to answer the question, what are these things over here? Well, the RDS data view lets me pick whatever server. Actually, I hadn't picked this CF Bob one, so let's see, drum roll. So there you go, I picked him. Yeah, and check it out. I can see what data sources are defined in my CF admin, right? So check it out. That's what RDS does. That's why these editors needed this and benefit from it. And this is what the other extensions for CFML do not do. This is letting CFBuilder reach into CF and say, hey, what are the data sources on that CF instance? Here's the names of them. Well, it's not just what are the names of them. Look, there's that CF art gallery that's built into CF art gallery database. And that database is what's that thing called? It's had different names over the years, but it's a built-in Java database that ColdFusion has inbuilt, and you don't have to do anything. There's no server or service. But anyway, you may know that there's an art table. And in that art table, what are the columns? Well, there's the columns for that. So some of you might be yawning, and some of you might be delighted, and some of you might be panicking. But let me move on. The point is you can use this to see what data sources, what tables, what databases, what tables, and what columns. But more than that, check it out. I can right-click on a table. Sorry, it's just so little small. I can right-click on the table, and look, there's show table contents. And it's now reaching from CFBuilder to my CF instance and talking to that data source and internally saying, hey, do a query of all the rows and columns in that table. And look, there's art name of Charles, Charles and Pastels and blah, blah, blah. This is stuff from the default sample database that's provided when you implement a developer version of CF. You may not see it because you didn't implement the developer version, but you could see your own databases, assuming that everything's working. Well, anyway, that's that. And there's the SQL statement, and you can build it by hand and lots of cool stuff. Well, that's the RDS data view. And the question asked was, what's the RDS file view? Well, again, this is not new. The RDS file view, if I come down here to CF 2025 Bob, focusing on that. Well, by default, it lets you see whatever drives CF can see. Let's be clear. I said whatever drives CF can see. And if this was a remote server, I'd be seeing the drives on that remote server. And now you can start to see why some people panic at seeing this RDS. Wait, I can look at my drives on my remote server. If you enable RDS on the server, you're saying you want to allow this. If you connect it in CFBuilder, you're saying you want that. And that's what it does. Now, you can see all the folders and files and open them and edit them even. Yes, you could edit them from here and save them, and they get saved back onto the server. Should you work that way? No, I wouldn't recommend you should, but you could. The point is, that's what the RDS file view feature is. Now, before anybody goes away totally panicked and think, I'll never do that, I want to point out also that in CF for 20 years has been this feature called sandbox security. And if I'm going to just add a user. And remember I said I could pick a user's name and say whether he's allowed to access RDS. There's also a feature down here that says, what sandbox should his use of things be limited to? Most people never ever use the sandbox feature, but if you enable the sandbox feature, and that's up here called sandbox security, you'd have to enable it and configure it. And I've got articles from 20 years ago that I point to on my website, carehart.org/articles. You can read about how to set up sandbox security. Well, I'm saying you could limit what folders somebody could see from within their use of RDS. That's part of what this can do. It does lots of cool stuff, but I'm going to leave it at that. So I went off on a tangent there. Derby, yes, thank you, Carl. It was Derby. It's just a little brain fog because I'm trying to finish up in the next 15 minutes or even 12. Okay, cool. Thank you. And I see some more typing, but I'm going to move on. So those are some things that RDS can do. Let's move on in the final time we have remaining to the stuff that's really pretty cool. Some features in CFBuilder require that the files you want to work with be defined as a project. So you may notice up here, there's another thing. Remember, we're on the CF logo. We're not in the source control. We're not in the file explorer. We're not in the extensions. We're in the CF thing. And there's that CF servers. And I'm saying at the top, there's a project manager. What? Okay, projects are a CFBuilder concept. There's a corollary in vscode, but these are very specifically CFBuilder things. And they were in the old CFBuilder. They're in the new CFBuilder. A project is a pointer to where code lives. And if you define such a project that says where your code lives, then if you tell that project to connect its use to a given server, then there are features that you can do against the code in that project that leverages the features in that CF instance, like the things we've been talking about and more. So now let me explain this. First of all, check it out. If I want to add a project, if I've never done one before, there's a create button and it walks me through saying, what's your workspace? And do you have one or should I create one? Let me just say this real quick. The notion of a workspace is a VS Code thing. It's also a CFBuilder thing. But the point is, it's a VS Code thing. And Adobe in the old CFBuilder required you use a workspace. In the new CFBuilder, they require you use this workspace. The workspace does not have to be where your code lives. The workspace is just a kind of a metadata thing. So you can put it wherever you want. And then the project points to where your code lives. So I'm saying when you say I want to create a project, first it says, well, what's your workspace? Well, that could be anywhere. It can't be in the same folder as the project, and it'll tell you that. But let me move on. This is covered in the docs. I'm just going to say real quickly, you create a new workspace, put it wherever you want. Doesn't matter. And once you've created the workspace, then it says, well, where does your code live? Because that's where the project's going to be. And you give it a name. And you can see I've already done that. So I created a project called Arehart Site Local, and I had pointed it to a particular code base. And if I edit it, I can see that's what I called it. That's where I said the code lived. And notice it's not inside of ColdFusion's CFusion www root. And I'm not using command box, so it's not deep down inside of command box either. It's just a folder. We'll come back to that later. But the point is, yes, you can point CFBuilder at any folder you want. Now, there's a feature there that says what server is it using? And if you look, there's my CF 2025 Bob. But I had it pointing on my CF 2025 that I'd already defined. So you connect the project to a server. And if you don't do that, then some features that leverage projects won't work until you connect it to a server. But I have connected it to a server. And now, drum roll, please. I'm going to come down here to that UGTV section that I had right there. I have a folder in which I had opened a file. I'm going to close this so we don't get distracted by that or by that or by that. But I ain't going to do a folder. I'm going to just do a file. Here's a file right here, the file we looked at before. Get some of these things out of the way. You can clean these up. They're all just little tabs you can close. So here's my code. Before I can do the folder, check this out. I'm going to right click on this file, not on a particular line of code, just on the file. And if I scroll down to the bottom, and let me hide this thing. Sorry, that's been in the way the whole time. I forgot that you guys see that. I apologize. That's been there the whole time. So I'm going to do it again. I'll right click and scroll down. And I didn't talk about this before. It's not showing up here. Why is that not showing up here? Well, let me show a different thing. This is also useful as a proof point when you're trying to get things working. I had said that if you right clicked in a file down at the bottom, there's these things called run as ColdFusion application. Let me explain that, because if it can't run it, then it can't do some of these other things. So hold thought. Let's talk about run it. If I tell it to run this file as a ColdFusion application, it's going to try to browse it. So check it out. I'm just going to click on it and tell it to run it. And it's going to open my browser and go to a URL that runs that piece of code, that template. And it's first time since I restarted ColdFusion. And there it is. There's my site. It's my local host. Now you might go, wait, where did the 71 come from? Right. So let me talk about this. If you run ColdFusion locally and you put your code in some folder, you need some web server to be able to find it. And some of you put your code inside ColdFusion's CFusion www root, and you can do that if you want to. Some of you use IIS or Apache. And if you set up, let's say, IIS, you can have a site in IIS, and it can listen on whatever port you tell IIS to listen on. And you can point it at whatever code directory you want to, and they can run the ColdFusion web server configuration tool. None of this has anything to do with CFBuilder, but if I have set up so that that code in that folder can be browsed on my local machine via that port, then I can browse it, right? If I knew that URL, I could browse it. Well, how did CFBuilder know to do it? CFBuilder knew to do it because if I come back to the server that I'd connected the project to, check this out. I'm going to the server. I'm editing that server. Look closely, edit server. I'm editing that server. and there's a URL prefix tab. Check that out. And I told it that if I'm running code that's in carehart.org/carehart.org site, use this localhost URL. And I did it with the add new and filled those two things and hit submit. And then I hit finish. And now that was in there. So now check it out. When I'm in this template, it knows it's in that right there. You can see when I mouse over it, it says I'm in carehart.org site as UGTV list.cfm. It just literally appended UGTV list CFM to that URL and opened it in my browser. If it can't do that successfully, there's a lot of things that CFBuilder won't be able to do, like the debugging. And you might have noticed when I right-clicked, I was able to say debug. We'll come back to that in a second, but I want to focus first on, if I come over here on the left side of the screen and scroll down to that list.cfm, I shouldn't have to do this, but since it didn't come up over there, I want to see if this solves it. Check this out. If I right-click on that file in here, right, I don't know why, I should have seen it in my drop-down in the code, but check it out. There's that run as ColdFusion. I can do that from on the left, or I can do it from in the code. There's the debug. We'll come back to that. But check it out down here. I can run Security Analyzer. What? Yes. So ColdFusion Server has the ability to do analysis of your code. CFBuilder, configured through a project to talk to a server, can say to that ColdFusion server, hey, could you analyze this code and tell me if there's security vulnerabilities? This has been around since CF 2016 in the old CFBuilder, and it's been brought into the new CFBuilder. And many people don't even know it exists, don't know how to do it, can't get it working because you've just seen the hoops you have to kind of go through, the humps you have to overcome. But boy, once you do it, it should work. Now, let me just say, does it work? Drum roll, I'm going to click it. And it's going to try to do a security analysis of that particular template. And I'm noticing that it's not opening. So there you go. Okay, cool. Yay, touchdown. All right, so look at that. It opened up a new tab, right? I was in list.cfm. Here's Security Analyzer. And it's found a bunch of security issues, including a SQL injection. Yeah, lucky me. I've got some SQL injection issues to be dealt with. And I can click on this and be taken to them. And then I can also click on them and go into the file. And so let's see. Am I being a naughty boy? Wow, yes, I am. So I don't mind doing this publicly. I've got some code. Now, I will say I have firewalls and web application firewalls, including Pete's wonderful FuseGuard. So that's been protecting me, but I shouldn't be relying on that. I should have fixed this code, and I haven't run that analyzer against this code. But let's move on. Let's not focus on my code. Let's focus on the tool. Did you catch? I was able to find out by static analysis of my CFML code that I have cross-site scripting vulnerabilities and CF cookie vulnerabilities just by right-clicking on it. Now, let me go a step further. If I'd have right-clicked on the folder called UGTV, it would run the analyzer against the whole folder. And it'll find even more, of course. And if there's thousands of files, it'll take a while. This is several or dozens of files. It might take a minute or two, but in a moment, it'll open up and show a new tab that will have analyzed the entire folder. While we wait for that to pop up, let me move on and say, for those that get excited about this, again, read the docs. It's in that page I started with in the documentation. There's a whole section on the security code analyzer. You can choose to focus on some or others, and check this out, you can export. And when you export, it asks you, where do you want to put it? And in my case, it's defaulting to my downloads directory. I'm going to go ahead and go there, and it's written out a folder in my downloads. So I'm just going to go to that and show you. It's a pretty nice looking report, and you could use this to test things and give to people and blah, blah, blah. So let me look at documents. All right, downloads. It's being a little slow running back. I got a bunch of stuff. Remember, I got all those other things running. I should probably close some of those. Let me close vscode because that's not important anymore. I'm going to close cursor. That's not important anymore. I've been pushing the envelope of being able to run too much at once. Okay, downloads. And it's a folder. Let me tell you. So if I go to my downloads and have it sorted by date modified, it ain't there. Well, it's not there. What the hell's wrong? No, it's down at the bottom because I got to sort it by that. Folders are added to the bottom. And there's that one. And it's got a report.html in it. And when I open it up, it'll open in my browser, right? Whatever your browser is, Chrome, Firefox, Safari. I'll tell it to open in Edge. And it's a very pretty looking report. It should be launching somewhere. There it is flashing. Where are you? There you go. So check that out. So this was just one that I did earlier. I told it to export that one that we had done. And the point is it has a nice little graph and has graphs of all sorts of things and the line numbers and all that. That's not new. That's been around since CF 2016, but many people don't know that it exists and they don't leverage it. And I want to say one more thing before we got to get close to wrapping up soon. You will see in some places on the Adobe website even that say this security code analyzer only works with a ColdFusion Enterprise license. I'm here to tell you that was lifted a couple of releases ago, but the word never got documented correctly. Try it. You'll find it works with the developer edition. So I'm saying if your CF that you've connected to is developer edition or the standard edition, if you put the license key in, yes, you can use the security analyzer. It should work. Now, it may not work for all these other reasons we talked about. You didn't have RDS correctly set up. You had a firewall in the way. You didn't connect your project to the server. You didn't set up a project. Didn't set up a workspace, right? So you got to get these things right for that stuff to work, but it absolutely does work. Now, I want to move off of this, and I know there may be questions. I'll come back to questions in a moment to show you finally the debugger, right? So let's explain this. Of course, you can go to the CF admin and turn on the feature that says show debug output at the bottom of the page. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about step debugging, line by line, going through code to intercept it and step through it and look at variables. Yes. And this is not new. It was in the old CFBuilder. It was in HomeSite Plus. It was in CF Studio, and it was based on RDS. So again, you have to have RDS correctly set up. Your CF machine has to be able to reach the CF server to talk via RDS, but assuming all that's done, then one more thing you have to have done. I go to the admin. In the debugging and logging section, so up here, the third button is called debugging and logging. And most of you come here to do this enable robust exception or enable debugging output. These have nothing to do with what I'm about to talk about. Instead, and this has been like this since like CF6, it's called debugger settings. Debugger settings, not debug output settings, debugger settings. And if you don't enable it, then this stuff won't work. So if you enable it and hit submit, then again, CF will make modifications to the JVM config and some other stuff, and you'll restart CF. And with CF now running with the debug able to be reached, and with RDS able to be reached, and with CFBuilder properly set up, then please, I'm going to go to my little index.cfm here. Sorry, it's my index.cfm. Here it is, index.cfm. Just want to show you. So here's the front door, not important, it's just a CF include, but I'm going to set a breakpoint. So what does that mean? So in CFBuilder, like in most IDEs that support debugging, when I mouse to the left of the line number, up pops this little thing that says click to add a breakpoint. So I'm going to click to add a breakpoint. Now that I've added a breakpoint, if I debug this, then when I run the request, it will intercept that request, hold it up, and say, wait a second, the developer wants to debug. So drum roll, please. Here we go. I'm going to debug this. So I'm going to right click and scroll down to the bottom. And there's buttons at the top, but I'm just going to move on. This is what we've been talking about. Debug as ColdFusion application. I'm going to click that button. It's going to do that, run the page. It's going to launch my browser to that page. It's going to launch that URL. Again, if that stuff doesn't work right, this isn't going to work right. And then we should see my browser come up first. And I don't know why it's hanging up. And I was afraid of this. This absolutely should work. I was doing it. There you go. Here it comes. It's just taking time. Oh my goodness. All that time the other security analyzer report was running. I'm going to close that, close that, close that. I don't see the debugger having come up, but let's see if the page is sitting there running. What was the last tab? No, it hasn't come up yet. So now I'm going to try one more time. if this ends up not working for some reason, there's just some technical, there you go, there you go. All right, so look, now look, the page came up. There's that URL, just as if I had run it as a ColdFusion application, but there's the URL. Notice the little X to the left of it? That means my browser has not finished rendering it. And those who can see it, there's a little spinny circle thing, and different browsers render a waiting page various ways. What's it waiting for? Why, it's waiting for me to debug it. What do you mean, Mr. Wizard? So check it out. Here in CFBuilder, it has now shown me these buttons up here. And again, this is all documented in the CFBuilder docs under the debugging pages. But look, I can continue running the request, or I can step over this line of code, or I can step into this line of code. And I can see variables that are in play. And I haven't really set any variables, but I've got stuff in my application CFC or CFM. There's request scope variables. There's CGI scope. Yeah, I can see all those variables. And there's much more. There's watches and call stacks and stuff like that. But let me move on because we're running out of time. Check this out. I'm going to step into it. Well, first, let me step over it. If I step over it, it's going to leave that, move on. And if there's no other breakpoints that it hits, it's just going to render the page. And there it is. It rendered the page. Okay, so there's the page. But I'm going to refresh it. And let me just go to another page first and then come back to it so it's more obvious that I'm doing something. Yep, that should have come up immediately. I don't know why that was slow. But remember, this is all on my local machine. I got a lot of stuff running at once. It's a little slow. But I'm going to click on CF411. Sorry, no, it's UGTV. And notice it's not coming up. It's spinning. It's got the X, so it has not come up yet. If I come back here, there it is waiting for me to do what I want to do. And if I just wanted to proceed, I could do that. If I wanted to stop debugging, I could do that. But check this out. I can say, I want to step into. This is a CF include. What does that mean? I mean, I know you know what a CF include is, but what does step into mean? It means, hey, open that file called list.cfm. Check it out. There it is right there. It's not important that I had that open. I'm not going to have it open now. I'm going to say step into it. And it's going to open it. And it's going to take me into that code to the first line of CFML inside that template and stop on it and show me that. Now, I don't know why at the moment it's not doing that. Again, I think I've got some stuff running in the background that's causing some trouble. But I've been doing this for years, and I did it before this presentation and over the weekend. It absolutely does work. I don't know why it hasn't rendered yet. I don't think it makes sense. Yeah, the page is still spinning. So it should have opened that. Now, I closed it. I don't know if I should have done that. I'll tell you what I'm going to do just to move. I can always stop it. And that, if it takes, should cause the page to render. There you go. And with the debugger stopped, if I click away from it and click onto it, again, you can see even just this page, text, there's no reason. I must have some stuff causing a lot of resource usage in the background. Don't know what that's about. It's what we're doing, folks. It's not what these pages are nothing. Running CFBuilder really doesn't add any burden. But anyway, when this comes up and goes to that page, I would have clicked on that page. Then I could have started the debugging session again. And it worked. You saw it worked. I'm telling you, you should be able to step into code. It would open up the new file. You can step through the code line by line, see the variables. Let me leave it at that. While I've been talking, I see a bunch of chats, and now's a good time for us to stop. Yeah, I've gone too long. So some good forums for a new developer in CF. We'll tell you what. So back to Padma's question. She said, please suggest some good forums for new developer in ColdFusion. If you go to my real website, careheart.org, right there on the screen, and go to the CF411 section, in that CF411 section, I have categories, right? And if you look for, if you just scroll down a little bit, here's help mechanisms for CFML, community forums, social media, the CFML Slack, Stack Overflow. I list about 10 places you can get common information and questions answered and all that stuff. Oh, good. And there's Annette pointing out, yes. And so, and then Annette mentions Pete's CF break, and I have that in here too under newsletters and blog aggregate, blog news highlights services. So again, I have 2,000 tools and resources, and the first section is all resources. So go check that out. But thank you, Annette. Perfect. Yep, and CFML Slack, there you go. Cool. Time, yep, cool, 5 minutes if you're good. Facebook, yeah, and the Facebook programmers group, I point to that too. So I don't know if that came up after I pointed that, but in my help mechanisms, I do have the Facebook group, the LinkedIn group. There's a bunch of different groups. I'll just leave it at that. So any questions about the stuff we've discussed in the remaining minutes that we have? How relevant is this info if I use VS Code with ColdFusion Extension Builder? I'm not quite sure what you mean, because this is about the ColdFusion Extension Builder. You might mean the non-Adobe CFML extensions. And I said earlier, you can have those or not have those. You can enable, disable extensions freely. But yes, this all was about that. And I think you said Woot too. I must have later answered it. Still looking for a snippet solution VS Code, one that closely matches the HomeSite IDE. I did discuss that in the PDF of the previous talk, so check that out. And if you don't find a good answer to that, feel free to email me. My email address is all over my website. There's a contact page. And there's your repeat of the question in the chat. Cool. But we'll wrap up. Let's do the question, right?
Yes.
Did you, Apoorva, were you just chiming in to remind me of the giveaway?
Yes.
Yep. So now let's do that giveaway, everybody. So if you haven't heard each of these sessions, Adobe's given us, is it $50 gift card? Is that right, Apoorva?
Yes, it is a $50 gift card.
There you go. And we just need to have a way to do it. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do to see who was paying attention. I said for you to be able to use RDS. Oh, no, I didn't say it. Darn it. I meant to say it. Let me say it now. Did I? No, I didn't. So just real quick, it's worth pointing out because someone's going to inevitably complain about this if I don't. When I said that RDS stuff worked, it was under security. So I guess it means I can't give you the question, but I'll think of something. To set up RDS, I told you that you have to enable it. You have to use the port for the built-in web server. That port 8500, for example, that's going to be closed by your firewall to the outside world. Okay. Anyway, then there's usernames and passwords, and you can make it be a different username and password. Also, this is very important. Check this out. In the admin, under allowed IP addresses, we're not in the debugging IP addresses. We're in the security allowed IP addresses. Most people think this is about the CF administrator. It says that. And yes, you can't get to the administrator unless you're in this list. Well, similarly, if you're not in this list, if there's anybody listed here, if you're not in the list, you can't get to the RDS feature either. Okay, so that's a good thing for security. I'm telling you, if you're not in this list, RDS won't work. So, by the way, don't take all these out, because then that means anybody can get in unless your firewall alone is protecting your port for the built-in web server for the CF administrator. But yes, so my question was going to be, what are one or two of the ways that you can prevent RDS from being open to the outside? And that was my question, and I didn't give you the information. So let me see. You need to enable it on the server. Yep, we talked about that. Dev environment use keys. Well, I did address that. Sorry, I didn't address it enough. Yeah, email that question to Mark. Mark's offering to get you an answer from them directly. Oh, crap. What's a good question? That was my question.
I think Sean answered it even before you went to share your screen on that topic.
No, that wasn't the question that I was asking. I mean, that okay. We'll go with that. Okay, so Sean, if that was your answer to my question, it's one of the ways. We'll leave it at that. Yes, that was one of the ways. So thank you for that. We're out of time anyway, so we'll go with that. So Sean Rutledge, congratulations. You won. But everybody else, I hope you won with that extra bit of information I shared. And with all this about CFBuilder, go forth and have fun. Reach out to me directly with questions. If you don't find them answered by others, I can help. And if it takes more than a quick answer by email, I do consulting for a living. I can do a online screen share session, little as 15-minute minimum intervals, satisfaction guaranteed, or you won't pay for the time. I just help solve problems all day with ColdFusion, Lucy, CommandBox, Boxlang. So if I can help, just let me know. And with that, I'll say thanks, everybody. Until the next time.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for the session. Thank you so much.
1 minute early, too. Woohoo! But the next guys are coming up, whoever's next. So we got to wrap up, everybody.
Yeah, we have Raymond next. We'll be coming in.
And you'll stop this recording, so this will be saved as its own recording. So everybody stick around for